Hey guys, just got finished watching a video um, talking about my video of anti-Semitism. Now I'm gonna try and deal with this in several sections, but the first thing I'm gonna deal with outright, because I think the person in this video did have a point, is the people playing the victim. Okay, and anyone who's looked at this whole exchange and all the objections that I brought up to preterism in particular, they've been about topics. And anti-Semitism is a legitimate concern if you stop to think about it. You watch that video, look at the questions I posed. If you're not a preterist, just watch it and see if you found that video to be straw manning or ad hominem or any of those other things. And the fact of the matter is it's not. It's a legitimate question. If all the simple Bible prophecies flow from Israel, if it flows from the idea that how Israel goes, the rest of the world goes. And the Bible clearly states Ezekiel, Daniel, Zechariah, Jeremiah, the enemies of Israel, anti-Semites, will be destroyed. That is the basis for biblical prophecy. And I'm not going to get into more broad arguments about preterism. I'm just going to stick to that simple subject. It's all over the Bible. The enemies of Israel are destroyed. And you read the passage in the Old Testament when it talks about the Gentile will come to the Jew and learn about their God. This never happened. Hasn't happened yet, not wholesale. And to me, yeah, from my position, there is no way to nicely say it, even though I think that video was very polite in what it said. There's no way to nicely say, in the end of the day, without actually saying the words, preterism, it's a fact. It was founded in anti-Semitism. There's just no way around it. None. The doctrine is anti-Semitic. What does the doctrine say? That the Jews were judged and destroyed as a people by God himself. If that's not true, it's anti-Semitic. If it is true, you could ultimately say God is anti-Semitic. He didn't keep his promise. He didn't do anything he said he was going to do in the Old Testament. And no amount of reinterpretation is going to do that. Now, to deal more directly with this victim thing, because the comments keep being used, the other side. I, even in my comments, and I don't comment on preterist videos. I may have done it once or twice early on, but you go watch all the videos that these knuckleheads have made. I don't comment on them. It's preterists come to my page and comment on them, and they make these ridiculous statements, and they say they ignore the arguments. Look at every video I've made about preterism. Look at them. The church father argument, no answer. The literal language of the dead, no answer. The literal language of Ezekiel, no answer. And like I said, I'm working my way to Matthew 24. The problem is, if you go straight from Matthew 24 and you start propounding a Jewish view of it, no one's going to get it. You got to start establishing things first. Spiritual death, no answer. And this excuse of this is not a preterism of it doesn't matter what your preterism is. It's the main core of the doctrine. The doctrine is built on anti-Semitic belief. It's just a fact of the definition. If you're a Christian and you think, and this is something I'm going to deal with too, there's no such thing as spiritual Israel. None. None. No spiritual death, no spiritual Israel. These things do not exist. There's not one verse in the Bible that talks about spiritual Israel. It's people confusing things and trying to mash everything together once again. Never fails. Never fails. That's what happens in all of these debates. It's mashing a whole bunch of stuff together to form a concept that's just not there. But all that being said, the charge of being anti-Semitic, I think a preterist would have to say that's true. If I was a preterist, I would say it's true. You could call it anti-Semitic because it strips the Jews of their promises. It strips them of any special status as the people from which blessings flow. You notice the Old Testament, it touches on this several times that the nations that bless Israel will be blessed. Well, there is no more Israel, according to you. There's no spiritual Israel in the Bible, so there's no Israel at all. So where do these blessings come from? It's redundant. But as far as this, and it is, it's playing the victim. That's what preterists do. And if you watch my first videos on preterism, I told you this is what happens. I've seen this before. They act just like Calvinists, and that's just a fact. They don't, which argument of mine has been dealt with besides saying that's not the preterism I believe in? Well, that's not the mainstream doctrine. And guess what? Preterism, and I'm going to show in my next video, from their own websites, okay, their own Preterist Planet and all these other places, they believe in spiritual Israel. They believe in it. It's an unbiblical concept. There's Israel, and then there's everybody else. But it's not, I don't know about other futurists. I don't know. And it's this garbage about pretending to be open. When have I ever pretended to be open-minded to the garbage doctrine of preterism? I have never pretended to be open-minded about it. I've launched theological questions against it. I don't believe in preterism. I don't have a curiosity. How many times do I have to say this? I'm not curious to learn about preterism. I can read what preterists have written, and I can draw the logical conclusions that follow from it. And that's the problem with preterists. The conclusions, all the things that should be there aren't there. They just stick to this. They force the words of Jesus to be true. And listen very carefully to what I'm saying. They force them to be true in the way that they understand them in Matthew 24. That's what it all hinges on. If there's an alternate, or I should say a better understanding of Matthew 24, then preterism it collapses completely and utterly. And the truth be told, the Old Testament, they put such an emphasis on certain words, generation, and who is he talking? Well, what did he mean when he said from generation to generation, his promise to the seed of Jacob would persevere? The seed of Jacob, that's a people. That's the bloodline of Jacob. The priests are coming, the Levite priests will come back. This is stuff people just don't understand. They don't even bother to deal with it. They just talk about how true their doctrine is and how, it's anti-Semitic, and that's a fact. And I won't, and it's not ad hominem. It's not a straw man attack. It's the logical conclusion of the doctrine. I don't know what it is with people that can't think. Now, I'm going to point out to you, too, before we go on this cry and get me some tissues, of how mean the futurists are. And I don't even call myself that, but whatever, how mean we are, and how we pretend to, like I said, I've never pretended to give any quarter to preterism. None. Never have. I said it in my very first video. I have no interest in preterism. And I said it again in the middle of all these videos. I'm not going to pretend that I'm looking for the truth of preterism, because I'm not. And you can say I'm closed-minded. You can say whatever you want. I looked at preterism some time ago, and I reached the same conclusions. And now it's actually becoming more clear that I've studied the scripture more. The more blatant problems of preterism are more clear to me now. Because when you first hear this doctrine on the surface, it sounds like it's impenetrable. This is the doctrine that, and then when you start looking at it in detail, there's so many problems with it. And that's what I try to do in putting them out one by one. And it is a byproduct of part of why the Gospel of John was written. They got tired of waiting. That's exactly what happened. But be that as it may, sticking on this victim thing, just to point something to be very clear, like I said, I don't comment on preterist videos. I don't. Because I know it's useless, you see? I already know. But the thing is this, they'll come on my channel and comment, and you look at my comment threads, look at some of the stuff that they say, just the flat out assertion. Well, preterism is true though. And I'll say, well, I would reject it on these grounds, points 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, actual points. And then it's like, that's not my preterism. It's all these excuses. I even had one told me that that's why we don't have the original copies, because we're not supposed, this has nothing to do with us. So it's ridiculous, this nonsense. But if you remember, Willie T made a video, and he was furious. People calling him heretic. See, they think they're the only little group of people in the whole world that are having people just aggravate them and say stupid things to them. And that's why I don't comment on their videos. I don't. That's a fact. And he makes this video. I'm not impressed. Calling your brothers heretics. Whatever was being told to him. Okay. And I'm sure some of my videos probably made him angry. But there are logical questions. It doesn't change the fact. The question of anti-Semitism has to be asked. It has to be. You're not some special protected status because you're a preterist. And anytime someone says something against you, you pretend. No, I never pretended. I never pretended. Preterism to me is about as fictional as a comic book. Okay? And I never pretended any different. It is anti-Jewish. It's not just un-Jewish, it's anti-Jewish. And yes, my theology does not allow me to adopt a position that destroys the very nation and the very people on which the promises are hinged. And it doesn't allow me to invent spiritual death, and it doesn't allow me to invent spiritual Israel and all these other things. But he makes this video and he's furious. Okay, and I don't know what was being told to him. I don't know. He contacted me in private, and it seemed to be, and this was before, I think, and it was a pleasant discussion, and I kind of said what I had to say, and he said what he had to say, and it was kind of it. But if you look at my videos, it's all about the arguments. This is the first one where I've really gotten cross with people. See, and that tells me something. It tells me something when I bring up objections, and you, like I said, watch my videos. My videos always they're just about the objections. I don't sit there and say, well, the other side, and that's just a reference to me and some other people, I'm sure, but it's to me. I'm the only one really making videos against preterism. And I don't do that. I don't sit there saying those kind of things in my videos. And now I'm supposed to say, well, see, he said anti-Semitic, so he's just trying to play some kind of race or victim card or hate card to poison the minds of people. The videos on preterism are there. Go watch them. I'm not telling anybody not to look into anything. I'm telling them this is what's wrong with it, in my opinion. And anti-Semitism is a legitimate question. It was born from a man who was anti-Semitic, and you're going to sit there and you're going to tell me this had no effect on the way he understood Scripture. You're retarded. You're ridiculous. It's stupid. It just doesn't make any sense. We're supposed to believe someone just sat there completely unbiased, believing in the Trinity, being anti-Semitic, thinking God punished the Jewish people, stripped them of their covenant, when in Ezekiel he said, I will never turn my back on them again. I will never turn my back on them again. God promised to stick by those people, and I think God keeps his word. That's the basis of my position. Then Israel's reformed, okay? Like I said, none of these arguments ever get dealt with. No one actually thinks these things out. Israel's reformed. It's restored. Never before in history has that happened. And they kept their culture, no less. None of those arguments are ever addressed. Never. It's this fact that I said anti-Semitic. You're poisoning the waters. You're doing all this stuff. It's just a fact. When an anti-Semite comes up with a doctrine that's anti-Semitic, I would have to conclude that he's an anti-Semite. And the doctrine is imbued with anti-Semitism. You find it in the book of John. The person who wrote John was an anti-Semite. How clear do the clues have to be? Your law. The Jews. Got him talking the same way as Pilate. Trying by your law. Isn't it written in your law? He didn't say God's law. He doesn't say my law. He doesn't say the law of the prophets. See, in the Synoptics, that's God's law, and he respects it, and he loves it because that's the will of his Father for him. In John, it's somebody else's law. It's anti-Semitic. It's clear. And see, if you're a Jew and you read the book of John, I could see why you would do a cartwheel. I really could, because I can understand it's anti-Semitic in the way it's wording. Now, I would tell you this. If I believed in John and I believed it was anti-Semitic, I would still say it. I wouldn't be a coward about it. I would still say it. It's against the Jewish religion and the Jewish people. I would say it. And I would tell them, yeah, that's because your religion's been destroyed. It's been done away with. So dancing around the issue like it's not true is not going to fix anything. But getting back to this Willie T thing, you know, let's just call it a spade a spade. We're going to come out here and cry about all this stuff. So what does he do then? He makes a video, and it's a parody. I wasn't even going to watch it, but I did. It's a YouTube parody about futurism. It's called YouTube Fever, like it's some general topic, but no, it's actually about anyone who's a preterist. And it pokes fun at them. And then it makes a very serious statement at the end. And it says, what did it say? Does being I think, don't quote me verbatim, but this is what it says for the most part. Does futurism lead to people or you being criminally insane? And it says almost all the time. What is that? What is that? What happened to the series? How does that further the discussion? Every video I've ever made has been about a topic and been about the subject matter. And I've never sat there and started insulting people until now, because I will call out. But let's look at those words. Let's look at the words that Willie decided to use and apply to people like myself. And if you're watching this, yeah, it's the fact of the matter. If you're a futurist, he's saying this about you. If you believe that Jesus is coming back to fix this broken world and keep the physical resurrection promise that was given in Isaiah 26, when he says, my carcass, my dead body will stand up out of the dirt, and it will stand up with yours, or with his people at the time. This is what he thinks of you. It says, in criminal trials, the insanity defense is the claim that the defendant is not responsible for his or her actions due to mental health problems. See, I'm not stupid. Just like he said in his video, I'm not stupid. When I read that, I knew exactly what he was saying. Just from watching the video, I knew what he was saying. He thinks that almost all of us have mental health problems. Fair enough. Now let's look at the synonyms for almost always. Broadly, commonly, customarily, largely, mostly, normally, ordinarily, publicly, roughly, typically, universally, usually, and widely. So you're largely mentally ill, is what he's saying. In my videos, I didn't do stuff like that. My videos were about objections and problems that I just logically see in preterism, the thing that follow. And I do believe it's anti-Semitic, and it's not a straw man. It's a legitimate question. If your doctrine says a class of people has been destroyed, if I was a Jew and you told me my people had been destroyed, my religious rights, my promises you told me all that was stripped from me, I would call you anti-Semitic. It's simple. Let's try it a different way. If I walked up to an African American person and I said, my doctrine, preterism, says that y'all have lost y'all right to Africa, y'all have lost your heritage as a people, what y'all say means nothing, God has stripped you of everything that's related to you being African in descent, would you call me a racist? This is stupid. This is 2-year-old logic, and it's not taking on the issue. I'd like to see a preterist who actually admitted it and said, yeah, the doctrine is anti-Semitic because it destroys the people. How does this not follow? How does it not follow? See, this is where I have to question whether their brains are even functioning. How does it not follow when you walk up to a class of people? Perfect example, United States of America. Killed the Indians, stripped them of their land. I got that heritage in me. And if you took a white person and they walked up to the white person walks up to an Indian person now, and the Indian person says, you know, my people lived here for 1,000 years. And the white guy says, well, due to you being conquered by us, we're stripping you of your land. We're stripping you of your heritage. We're going to just say that that doesn't mean any. Everything you were entitled to as the original inhabitants of this land, we've just taken from you. Would you say that's racist? Would you say that's discriminating against a class of people for whatever particular reason? In this case, anti-Semitism. The Jews were destroyed because they were unrighteous Jews to the preterist. But they were destroyed. That's the thing. That's what people don't understand. You say they lost their birthright. I say they haven't. But this victim crap, this 2-year-old You know, anyone can watch my videos and plainly see that I've never pretended to like or have real questions about preterism. The only questions I have toward preterism is I don't understand how they answer some of this stuff. Two, they've always been about the subject matter. Okay, I haven't made videos making fun of preterists. You know, how would you? Maybe I should make a video where spirits of dead family members phase in and out because everybody's floating around and the resurrection is happening constantly. And the invisible meetings they have in their heart with the resurrected Jesus and the kingdom and all this other garbage and the spiritual Israel that they're a part of that is completely unbiblical. But I'm not going to do that because all my videos are about the arguments. They're about the arguments. And the only videos I can actually remember making in jest that may be kind of insulting with people were the Night of Comedy videos with Jehovah's Witnesses and Trinitarians. But you know what the funny part is? Even though they were a video designed to push the buttons a little bit to get people, see, ultimately to get people to think, I read the text how they understood it. That's all I did. This videos you see coming from the other side, it's there just to insult. That's the only reason that YouTube Fever video was put up. It didn't present two sides of the issue. It didn't. No, it was just to make fun of people. And when you listen to the preterist objections, like with the devil being destroyed, it becomes so blown out of proportion. Everyone's being possessed. The devil's making you do. No, he's always been a subtle creature. The devil did enter Judas. There was the man possessed who was so strong that they couldn't even bind him, apparently. Those things, but the people that believe like me, it's a subtle thing. It's a whisper. Sometimes it's personified, sometimes it's not. But we don't, there's no thoughtful position. The objections I brought up to preterism are far more thoughtful than anything that's come from the other side. It's just these ridiculous statements. They blow them way out of proportion. Way out of proportion. But it's clear that the preterist does not stand with Israel. Now you read the Old Testament and you think about that in Ezekiel at the end of Isaiah. Isaiah 66:22, is it? Or 66:22 or 66:33. Your seed will endure forever. Your seed. Your seed. Mary's seed was from the seed of that promise, which was from the seed of Adam. It's a bloodline. That bloodline will remain, and that's God's promise. And no, I'm not going to wear kid gloves when I talk about that, because that is serious stuff. You're saying God's not going to keep his promise, which they're just playing in the Old Testament. They're just playing. Age enduring. You know, you want to talk about the word generation? Yeah, from generation to generation. Olam to olam. Yeah, that don't mean nothing. So yeah, this victim crap don't work with me. If you're a preterist, these videos aren't for you really anyway. They're for the people thinking about it. Thinking about your anti-Semitic, foreign God doctrine of the Bible. You think God turned his back on his people. I don't. It's that simple. So we're not going to see eye to eye. But once again, I don't care. These videos are for people who are thinking about this. And anti-Semitism is something that needs to be thought about when looking at preterism and looking at its motivation. To split it up and say, well, the guy who made it was a racist. The people who taught him was a racist. The church he was in was racist. But it had no effect on the doctrine being true or not. I can see that to a point. But then we take a look at the doctrine. What does it say? What's the first thing it says? The Jewish people don't mean anything anymore. That's the very definition of anti-Semitism, stripping them of their identity. And the persecutions followed with people like this. And like I said, even now in this video, I can say up until a point that's true. You can say my premises are wrong. You can say it doesn't matter that he was brought up a racist in a racist church and a racist himself. That doesn't mean the doctrine's racist. Premises 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Well, let's see if it follows. Was the doctrine racist? Obviously. So my premises, you can't refute them. He was racist, raised racist in a racist church that was pagan. And then we look at the doctrine, and guess what? Premise number 1. Does it display characteristics of racism? Yes. Does it strip Jewish people of being Jewish? I mean, it does something so mind-boggling. It strips them of actually being what they are. And like I said, it's an honest question. What do preterists think about them having Israel? Should they have sided with the Palestinians? Was that land still theirs or not? It's a question. It's a legitimate question. Does Israel still belong to the Israelite people or not? If not, then you don't think that nation should exist today. But it does. And I'll stick with the word of God. God bless.